Hey everybody, welcome to October's Cloud Office Hours for you already own it in the DIB. I'm Keith Ward, part of our cloud strategy team here at Planet Technologies, and I will be your host today. We're going to jump in real quick here with the slide deck. With me today is my partner in crime, Jimmy Briggs, and we'll do an introduction for him momentarily. So thank you for taking the time out of your day. Let's go to the next slide, Jimmy. With me today is several members of our cloud strategy team. You can see the folks on the slide there that you can ask questions to in the chat. We thank our program team coordinators, Casey Clayton and Kim Snyder, who help us run this great program for our customers, and certainly a lot of thanks to our executive sponsor, Steve Winter. And remember, you can always contact us there on slide 3. Reach out to us at youalreadyownit@goplanet.com with any questions. If you're not getting newsletters, ping us at that email address as well, and we'll make sure our program coordinator reaches back out to you, and then you get the access to the newsletter. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. We're excited for today's content. So the focus of today is AI on your data. Let's go back one slide, Jimmy, if you would. And we're going to be talking about how you can use capabilities available to you today in GCC High to enable generative AI on your data for those of you in the DIB. And this will be through Copilot Studio, and we're going to get into that. But with me today, and we'll be doing some of the presentation, the demo is Jimmy Briggs. Jimmy brings over a decade of experience in managing, programming, and customizing Power Platform and Dynamics 365 solutions. His journey spans across global business, nonprofits, government agencies, making him a seasoned consultant in the field. Jimmy's a regular here on our You Already Own It program and has joined our office hours in the past to talk about various things such as Ignite updates, Power Platform governance, Power Pages, etc. So welcome back, Jimmy. Great to have you back on the program today. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So before we get into this too deep, I want to make sure that we take a minute, and sorry for the eye chart here, but I've been working with a number of customers over the past several months and wanted to just keep iterating on kind of where things fit. There's a lot of Copilots out there. You've got Copilot nomenclature across the Microsoft platform, so I wanted to take just a moment, help folks understand that. Sorry if this is review for some of you, but the Microsoft 365 Copilot apps, those are the ones that are integrated into your Office apps. So the Copilot that sits inside the rich client or over the web as well with Outlook, Word, Excel, Teams, etc. You can see the other things where Copilot for M365 Copilot's good for, such as helping you draft an email, summarizing a document, creating a presentation, those types of things. Today, we're actually going to be talking about Copilot Studio, which is part of the Microsoft Power Platform and is available in GCC High. So I didn't put that on the slide, but something to be aware of is M365 Copilot is not yet available in GCC High tenants. Hopefully, middle of next year, we are anticipating that landing. But today, we'll be focusing on Copilot Studio and the Power Platform, which allows you to build custom Copilots, if you want to call them those, or custom AI solutions with the low-code, no-code approach in the Power Platform, allows you to use templates and solution accelerators to rapidly develop and deploy, test an AI solution for your business. And then certainly there is on the Azure platform a significant number of AI services out there, which really is more intended at your professional development team, requiring a lot more expertise and understanding and depth around large language models, how you fine-tune them, how do you create them, how do you do things to do data grounding, all of those things. So we will focus today on using Copilot Studio to help you get access to the AI capabilities on your data in GCC High. So with that, we have a few poll questions. I'm trying to make sure I get the poll launched. All right, if you don't mind taking a minute, What aspect of Copilot Studio is you're most curious about? Copilot Studio are you most curious about today? Give everybody a minute to go over that. Have a handful of responses. It looks like so far most of us are interested in the ability to automate conversations, the potential impact on my industry, and then integration. All right, thank you. Let's go to the next poll. Slide number 7. How do you envision using generative AI in your role today? So think about this as what you currently do in your day-to-day job function, not so much necessarily specific to Copilot Studio, but how do you think about being able to use generative AI in your daily work? All right, looks like streamline internal communication is a big one for folks so far. Few unsure. All right, next one is going to be for those of you that have already been thinking about this, testing it, understanding some of your challenges, your concerns around using generative AI. I promise we only have one more poll. Just kind of set the stage for today. Yeah, as anticipated, privacy and data security is a big one. Thank you for that. Certainly, last poll. That was all. Okay. So with that, thanks for your answers. And then I just remind you can post in the chat if you're having any challenges with today's session or want any additional clarification. We've got folks looking in the chat too. So with that, we'll get into today's agenda with Jimmy. We're going to jump right in and we'll go over Copilot Studio, give you a brief overview, a flyover. He'll get into a demo and show you Copilot Studio, how we're using it, some use cases. We'll get into some best practices. We'll take questions and we'll take it to that point. So Jimmy, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Keith. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for your patience in my early slide DJing there. We should be good to go going forward. As Keith mentioned earlier, I'm Jimmy Briggs. I'm with Planet. I'm part of the Power Platform team here. Today, I'm going to be running you through Copilot Studio and giving you an overview of the designer. We're going to do a demo. I'm going to walk you through a topic that's using generative AI and also making use of some other Power Platform features, which you may or may not have exposure to, but you might get to see some of that today as well, like Power Automate and Microsoft approvals and how that can be tied into the Copilot experience. And then after that, we're going to jump back into just a couple, like 1 or 2 slides on some best practices, and then hopefully send you on your way answering any questions and with some links that'll help get you started if you want to get in. Moving on to our first slide here. The Copilot Studio, just to give you an overview about Copilot Studio, it's part of the Power Platform. It used to be called Power Virtual Agents in the past. So over the last 4 or 5 years, if you've seen that as an offering inside Microsoft's Power Platform, in the design centers for Power Automate or Power Apps, Power BI, some of the other offerings that come with Power Platform, it used to be called Power Virtual Agents, and it was a solution that allowed makers, citizen developers, and seasoned developers to build chatbots that would integrate into Teams and other business line applications that you might have. The reason that it's got rebranded and renamed comes from some of this partnership that Microsoft's had with OpenAI and with ChatGPT. Microsoft's has been able to leverage some of the fruition of that partnership, and now the large language model, or ChatGPT, is part of the back end, and help serve up and offer the conversational AI and the generative responses that those chatbots can now offer. So that's kind of why it's been rebranded, and now it's known as Copilot Studio. So in the past, if you had exposure or you've had any experience or you've seen things in the past of Power Virtual Agents, just know that that now is known as Copilot Studio going forward. And some of the legacy like blogs out there, if you're looking at stuff, might still refer to it as Power Virtual Agents. And somewhere, sometimes in the Power Platform, behind the scenes, if you're in some old areas, you might see that vernacular still around. The other interesting thing that comes with the overhaul is a comprehensive authoring canvas. So now when you're building the chatbot in real time, you can go through and navigate through every action block and every key moment that's going on throughout that process of that conversation that's triggered a topic and step through it. In addition, you can provide generative answers, and we'll show this in a moment in the demo. But in the past, you would have to hand dial and hand maintain and take on the technical debt of every topic and every topic answer that you'd have to program in to respond with your chatbots. But now, in current times and with the overhaul and with the introduction of ChatGPT, you can now just load your chatbot with knowledge sources and then specify which of those knowledge sources answers should use to respond to specific topics that you lined up for that chatbot. In addition to that, you have control over the responses because you can have a multitude of different chatbots in each Power Platform environment. You can have multiple environments in your organization for different teams of users, groups, departments, and agencies, and kind of subgroups of people. So it allows you to silo and segment that out. In addition, each chatbot can have its knowledge that it's loaded with dialed down to the individual responses I mentioned a moment ago. So when you provide a generative answer, the knowledge source, if it's a SharePoint site or some Word documents or a database, or maybe it's accessing some actions of Azure OpenAI, those specific trigger topics can be narrowly focused to only make use of bits and pieces of that total knowledge that's available for the entire bot. So you can get very granular. The takeaways, you can get very granular over the level of control that you have over each response and each bot, in addition to every environment. And then the last thing is that it's all no code and low code for the most part. So while you're building out your chatbot and the chatbot experience and in the designer, and what we'll see in the demo today is that everything that I show in the demo is click to configure or is drag and drop. And so there's not a lot of like code or languages and syntax to maintain, memorize, and stay up to date with as the product lives and maintains. So will the user interface that's used to build and maintain the chatbots going forward. All right, so with that, we're going to jump right into the demo. I'm not a big slide guy, so I have like 3 slides, and I'd rather show you than talk all day. But I did want to get that kind of stuff out the way and lay a foundation here. So what we're looking at right now is the Power Platform Solution Management area. You might have seen this in blue or in purple, depending on if you've been in Power Automate before or in Power Apps. In other areas of the Power Platform, usually you'll see a call out button that shows other key areas or features. So we have Power Pages and Power BI. I'm already in Power Apps, so I don't see that here, but I see Power Automate. And you'll see down here I have Copilot Studio. So I could click this, and if I wanted to, I would jump right into the designer, the comprehensive authoring canvas to build Microsoft custom copilots if I wanted to dive right in here. What I'm going to do instead is go into a solution. And the reason for that is because a solution is kind of like a folder, and it helps store and organize all the bits and pieces for each kind of chatbot that I might want to build. And it's one of our best practices inside Power Platform environments. So I'm going to click into this solution, and in here we'll see all the objects that make up this these 2 chatbots that we have for our demo today. We're probably going to look at 1, but I have 2 just in case, kind of a little backup guy. If I come here, we'll see Copilots, and they're both listed here. If I wanted to make a new Copilot, I could come to the option here and select New Copilot and start building a new chatbot right away that would be preloaded with all the conversational stuff that I would want. Or I can click my help desk. If I do, it'll drop me right into this screen. And this is the comprehensive authoring canvas from that slide that I mentioned a moment ago. We'll see off to the right, we have a test area here, and this is where I can interact and test with the Copilot. You'll notice that every screen I'm on throughout the Copilot Studio experience, my chat bot that I'm working on will always be at the right-hand side. So I can always get and test an idea or check something or look at something or run through a scenario while I'm in designing and developing the chat bot. I'm going to go through these tabs really quick on the designer, just so give you an overview of what you see or what you can expect if you come in here. The main page overview is really a summary of all the other tabs off to the right, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the details section here is important if you want to change the name of your chatbot, or more importantly, if you want to give it custom instructions. So if you have experience in ChatGPT, or if you have experience with other large language models, you might have experience that you can preload or kind of set an expectation of how that chatbot should behave, how it should talk to the people that it's interacting with. This is the area where you'd set the instructions at here in this section. Over to the right, everything kind of below that just summarizes the other tabs. We're just going to move horizontal now. To the right is knowledge, and this is where we would add knowledge for our chatbot. And so you can have up to 2 public websites or 2 SharePoint sites in preview, so not in GCC yet, but in commercial for the time being while it's in a preview feature. You can have up to 15 Dataverse tables, and then additionally, not in preview, but available for GCC and GCC High are the SharePoint, the public website, and the files options. And the file option is up to 500 megabytes, but you can have as many files as you have storage available in your Power Platform tenant. So it's 500 per file, and that's a per file limit, but you can have an infinite number of files as long as your Power Platform environment or your Power Platform tenant has enough file capacity available to be able to hold those. And so this is where you would configure knowledge for your generative answers and for the chatbot to be able to look at and be able to provide answers for individuals that would ask questions. The next tab over is topics. There's kind of 2 different categories of topics, system topics and custom topics. We're going to look at this lost device topic that we've built for today. All the other topics that you see here are the generic topics that start with every Copilot. If you went in and wanted to build a new Copilot right now, they'd load you with these starter topics to kind of get you in and playing around what you can see. But our lost device is the topic that we're going to actually drill into and look at in the demo today. On the system section of topics, you can almost think of these as feature switches in a way. And 2 that I want to call into. I'm not going to go over all of them in detail during the demo because we don't have a lot of time for that, but 2 that are really important if you're going to play around with the generative AI and with conversational AI. One is conversation boosting. And so this is what enables the Copilot to use the ChatGPT large language model to provide generative answers. So the generative answers that you build in topics will not function if this is turned off. This needs to be enabled. And then the other thing that's fun to turn on is fallback. And this allows the chatbot to respond if a topic isn't triggered. And this one you may or may not want to turn on. I have it turned on for our example today and for the ones that I build in demos. But what this does is it permits the chatbot to try to answer questions that do not have specific definitions in key phrases for a topic. So if it doesn't know what the user is trying to do, by enabling fallback, it kind of says to the chatbot, look, do the best you can to try to figure it out, even if it doesn't match any of the keywords or we can't figure out what they're trying to get done. So that's what fallback does if it's enabled. All right, into our custom topic, I'm going to drill into this lost device topic here so we can look at it. And we'll see there's some key phrases like stolen, lost, theft, compromised, and these trigger this topic and this pattern of actions to then take place in this process inside of our chatbot. We're going to come back in here and watch through this process in real time. What I'm going to do is change over to tabs here really quick. And we're going to look at the chatbot running inside of a Canvas app. So this is a Power App that's built on Power Platform. And what we've done is we've taken the Microsoft Custom Copilot and we've put it in the Canvas app here. And we're going to start our demo of interacting with the Copilot now. For the demo, this is a simple scenario. I'm going to play the role of a user. I'm at an organization and I was working remotely. Let's say I was at the airport and I got up to go take care of something or I was distracted, went to the bathroom, get coffee, whatever. And when I came back, my laptop was missing. But I still have my cell phone with me. And I know at our company here, we have this help desk app that IT rolled out. So I'm going to play the role of a user that's interacting with this app on my phone after I've just lost my laptop. And so we get the prompt here. It says, hey, I'm the help desk assistant, blah, blah, blah. There's some verbiage. And I'm going to say, I was at the airport. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for like the phone number or what the step is, what's the policy procedure, like what do I do now that I don't have my laptop and I think that it was stolen. So I was at the airport. I think my laptop was stolen. So I type that in the chat bot, that's going to go through, and that keyword stolen is going to trigger that key phrase, and we'll get a response back that says, hey, if your laptop was stolen, you should immediately call the IT security team. I know it's really hard to see on the screen because this is I can't make it bigger even if I zoom the browser, I've tried. But there's a phone number here, and just take my word for it, there's instructions on what to do with the policy. And then after that, I get a prompt, like, do I have an issue to report? I can say yes or no. If I say, yes, I do, now I can fill out this form and say, okay, it was a laptop. I can put in some information here about the situation if I want, enter in some information and click submit. And then the chatbot's going to respond and say, hey, you know what? Thanks a lot. Somebody from the IT department will reach out for you. And the things that I put in here were like the device type. Was it a laptop, a tablet, a phone? What's the device number? Details about the device, my information, that kind of stuff. And then I get a prompt that says, thank you for contacting the virtual assistant. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is what we're going to look at here in our topic. We're going to run through the same scenario. And I'm going to say essentially the same thing. I was at the airport and my laptop was stolen, I think. All right. And before I hit send on this, I'm just going to talk about a couple of events that are going on right now. One is that in Microsoft approvals, if I refresh this screen, so this is part of Microsoft Teams. I have an approval request that just came in at 1:23. And this is me, the user that just lost my phone, but on Teams on my phone now and on Outlook on my phone, I would get this notification of, confirm that this has been, lost for processing, and I can approve or reject this if I want. I'm using the web browser, but this would also be in the Teams app of my phone. The other thing that happens here in real time is that I'm receiving an email with the same action. So it's the same thing that we see in Microsoft approvals. It's just being communicated through multiple channels in case maybe I have one or the other. Maybe I don't have Teams installed on my phone, but I have Outlook. So now I get it in two different places. And when I approve, maybe I had to file an insurance claim as part of the process for losing the phone when the chatbot came back. So here I could put in my insurance claim number. Maybe there's a police report. Maybe there's other information for the IT department as an employee that I want to add in now that I'm at the airport and I'm trying to still find the laptop. And we don't know that it's gone yet or anything. So I get this. This will update approvals in real time as well. So that approval is updated. At the same time that's going on, if I change hats, I'm no longer the individual that lost my phone, but instead I'm the frontline IT support desk individual who kind of handles these situations when they occur. I also receive a high importance email that just came in right now that device was lost. So we're firing off a lot of different communication channels, and a lot of different activities are happening based off of the interaction that our user just had with the chatbot. And what's happening and how all that works and is dialed in together, we'll see now behind the scenes. So when we come now I'm back into the comprehensive authoring canvas for Copilot Studio, and I'm inside of my topic, and this is a specific topic about losing a device. And if I go ahead and I interact with my test center here, and I put in the topic here about the laptop being stolen, we'll see that we get the answer back. It's easier to read on this screen for sure. This dark blue line shows us where we're at in the process, and these check boxes show us that the process is confirmed, but we've hit our trigger. And now we've created a generative answer, and we've already kind of gone through and served up some information. We're asking the user, do you have an incident to report? Before I get into that, I want to back up. It's really easy to kind of jump over what's happening in this block right here. But what's going on is we're triggering off of the key phrase stolen, and then the large language model in ChatGPT behind the scenes interacting with our custom knowledge layer of data that we've loaded in is looking at the policies for all different IT situations that might occur. And it's identifying what happens if something's stolen. And then it's providing the steps and the procedure that the user should take if indeed their laptop is stolen with the accurate phone number. But this is a living repository of knowledge. This might be a SharePoint site. This might be a PDF that somebody maintains in OneDrive. It could be on our website or an internal website or a public site. But that knowledge lives now outside of the Copilot. So in the past, when this was Microsoft Power Virtual Agents, before this became Copilot Studio, I would have to go and keep track of this copy, or somebody or an individual would, and maintain this over time. If the phone number number changes, if the policy changes, if the next steps that occur change, this would have to be maintained. But because we're using generative AI and we have that system topic enabled to provide generative answers, that allows us to just be able to dynamically serve up content based off of whatever knowledge we have loaded in here. And then on this individual topic block, we could click to configure which knowledge sources it specifically has access to in order to be able to answer this specific topic. So that's how we get back to that original slide when I said you can get very granular with what your answers have access to. This is where you would click to configure it, would be right here. All right, so now we're moving back through this blue line. We've created that generative answer. We've given the user the information, and then we're prompting them with the condition to see if they want to report it. We can click yes. If we say yes, it serves up this form in line. And so we're following the blue line. We come down to our condition here, and that's where we serve up our adaptive card. And then we can fill it in. It's a laptop, our device number, some street info. I'm just rushing through for speed. We could add validation someday if we wanted to, but that'd make the demo slower. And we hit submit, and then we get the information that the info was sent off, and I can hear my inbox going off. And that's because we're calling an action. What this action is that we're calling is it's piping in all of the information from that adaptive card, and it's sending it over to Power Automate, which is also part of the Power Platform. And that Power Automate is going through, and that's what's executing and creating the approval. And the approval center that we see, that's what's sending the email off to that frontline IT service desk employee to disable a device, to start the insurance claim, to take the next step course of action. And it's responding back to the chatbot so it can continue the conversation. So that's all happening here in Power Automate, kind of, but it's stitched in and kind of married to and integrated in directly into the chatbot experience that we're creating with the custom Copilot here in Copilot Studio. And so it fills that in and sends it off. And then it responds back and says, hey, thanks for contacting us. And that's pretty much the extent of the demo for the most part. The key kind of that ties into AI parts is the generative answers here and how that ties into that knowledge source. And for the demo, we just loaded in a SharePoint document. But again, this knowledge source could be a public website. It could be a SharePoint site. It could be anything kind of that nature that dials that in. So now we're going to jump back over, and I'm going to find out how to get back to presenting the slide deck real fast, which I think I can get to right here.
Why we're switching over, if you did have a question about something Jimmy covered, throw it in the chat or raise your hand.
I have a question, Jimmy. So someone in the chat mentioned that hallucinations and bad answers are the things that they're concerned about most. Would the turning off the fallback potentially prevent that by restricting the knowledge sources? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so there is an option to where you can control the granularity or the temperature of the chatbot and how much it will resist like hallucinating. So that would be one option. Turning off fallback is also probably a good approach on that, and one to take if there's still an issue, or maybe a mixture of both. So one would be adjusting the moderation, and the second one would be to control it over granularity. So yeah, if you turn off fallback, then you definitely have 100% confidence that the topics that are triggered from that experience with the chatbot will only be topics that you've defined. It won't just kind of try to answer stuff. So absolutely turning that off, but also with turning that off, you lose the ability for it to just try to answer any question for the users. Another option is to adjust the temperature or how creative it is. And so just real fast, jumping back, I'll jump back to the slide deck here in a second. But in the settings of the chat bot under generative AI, there is the option for how strict the content moderation. And I think this with precision is the creativity. It says content moderation, but it's not so much of like moderating the explicit or like vulgar content like we would think. It's more of how creative it should be. So even when you try to say low, it's saying, hey, it's going to be inaccurate. You're going to get those hallucinations. So making sure this setting is set to high is step one. If there's still an issue, then I would experiment with maybe limiting fallback or playing around with some fallback or setting up controlled topics that trigger. Another thing you can do is track which situations hallucination might be happening if you see a pattern, and then build a topic with triggers that identify or adhere to that specific pattern that you're seeing a hallucination, and kind of weeding it out or pruning that scenario, if you will, by getting it reined in with the topic.
Awesome. We have a couple of more questions in the chat. One is, can you work with AI Builder within the Copilot Studio?
Separate tools.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They are, and one thing I meant to touch on was the Actions tab across the top of the comprehensive authoring canvas. So there's one tab that says Actions, and I showed the Microsoft Power Automate action that I was using in the demo. There's other types of actions outside of Power Automate, and one is to leverage AI skills such as AI Builder. So if you already have AI services that you're using, you can marry those into the Copilot Studio. And as Keith mentioned, they are separate tools. And the other is Azure OpenAI services. So if you're using something like Azure Search, that can be exposed to users through the publishing channels of Copilot Studio, but it has to be implemented as an action. So it's a great channel and a great pathway to involve those other services. It's a great entry point for users to be able to interact with those things, but they are separate, as Keith mentioned.
Yeah, another common one there is the integration of, if you've got a large language model that you fine tune in Azure Government and you want to expose that for your application that you're building in Copilot Studio, that's something you could build that integration as well.
There's also a question about whether Copilot Studio has its own admin center like the other platforms do.
It has, so Copilot Studio is part of the Power Platform, and it falls into the Power Platform Admin Center. So when I showed the knowledge tab and adding knowledge with file, I spoke to the file size limit's 500 megs, but the amount of file that you have is only limited by how much file storage you have available in the environment. That would be in the Power Platform Admin Center, where you would find out how much file storage it has, and it's shared across all model-driven apps, Canvas apps, Power Automate. So all of those kind of the Dataverse itself, they all kind of have a shared. Dataverse is separate storage. It's not file storage, but they're all under the umbrella of Power Platform, just like Copilot Studio is. And so I know this is a very long-winded answer, but the Copilot Studio Admin Center is essentially the Power Platform Admin Center.
So we do have quite like 3 or 4 more questions. I don't know if we want to address those now, or if you have more content you want to cover.
So let's jump into the best practices real quick. We only have 2 more slides, and then we can devote some more time to questions.
Absolutely.
Sure. Sounds great. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so best practices, number one is focus on immediate value. So in my scenario today, what we did was really lightweight. It was a very specific incident that's involves a couple of individuals. It's not a huge team of people, and it's not something that's overly complex, and it's not a very complicated process or procedure. It can be, but we were looking at a very short segment of it, of just the initial moment of losing the device to reaching out to the IT department, kind of that. And so focus on immediate value is really a recommendation to start with the low-hanging fruit. If you're thinking about starting projects for Microsoft Copilot Studio and starting up your first chatbot kind of experience within the organization, it's best to use a pilot team, a pilot group of users, and a small group or small team, and a very well-documented, well-known process or procedure that might be easy to fit into a scenario to go through the motions of. And the reason for that is that you're going to build in these conversation hooks, and it looks easy in a demo, in a quick meeting at lunch or something, but when you get in, you start to define the trigger topics and the actions, it can start to quickly get overwhelming and spaghetti, especially as it starts to get exciting when you start to see all the capabilities that might be there. And so winding that down will let you get a lot of learning out of it, and the learning experiences that you gain from that can then be rolled out into larger scale projects that are more complicated. And also with user exposure, if users have a really good experience in a small project and so on, it rolls out a lot better. If you have a very large, complicated process and it kind of falls flat when it's rolled out to all the users in the organization, they might not have as much trust or confidence in your future projects involving chatbots or AI. So a small team, low-hanging fruit, definitely the best approach to try to get those learnings out of the way first. The second thing is role clarity. Our process there involved users across different teams. If a device is lost, maybe there's accounting involved, maybe there's IT involved. Maybe there's immediate security people involved, the individual who lost the device is involved. So you have a lot of different hats. Think about all the different roles and make sure that you have representation for all those roles. Involve users in the test and the design portion when you're building out the Copilot and the topics and the trigger and the conversations. And also know who's going to kind of govern and say what goes and doesn't go, and kind of plan for multi-phase approaches when you're building out your projects. And that way you don't get stuck in a situation where things get kind of out of control, or you end up in a development hell situation where the chatbot just can't get off the ground and make it to production or make it out to a test. The third thing is to plan for human oversight. If you saw in my example, the user that submitted their device that was lost or stolen got an email to confirm it with Microsoft approvals, but it had all the information that they entered in just as a review. And so in the past, if I was reaching out to department or IT, if it was just simply search in a SharePoint site, I'd call the phone number and that individual would handle double checking it or say, hey, I didn't find a device with that number. But when you're doing it through a chatbot and through an automated process and you're trying to streamline the communication, you want to give individuals that are entering or submitting that information the ability to update or review or double check that along the way. And that can remove a lot of back and forth, especially in a critical situation like a device is lost or something like that. So plan for human oversight, especially when people are interacting with the chatbot. In the demo example that we didn't show today, mainly due to time, there was a feedback loop built in. So people can say, was this information useful that was presented to you? And they can say yes or no, and that can be tracked. And then that can be circled back into a feedback loop. So building in a feedback loop with the users as well is a great best practice to be able to refine and to build out new topics and to tailor and to silo and to kind of dial in those knowledge sources as well. And then the last thing is to design for actionable results and kind of plan for not just adding another way to search for something, essentially. So we could have just, pointed the chatbot at a knowledge source and said, okay, yeah, you lost your device. Here's the answer. Here's the phone number. Here's the procedure of how you go about it. Have a nice day. But while we have the user there and we know that they're searching for something that might be stolen, why not prompt them and say, is this what you are currently going through? Is this, what can we do? What is the next step in the process? And can we use Microsoft Power Platform, whether it's Power Automate or whether it's approvals or a combination of different solutions? Can we use these to try to take action and move that process and that procedure along further, or at least tee it up, even if it's creating a draft email for the insurance claim or reaching out and checking what's available in inventory to replace that device using Power Automate and some other services. Just thinking kind of what's the next step and how can we move that along further. And maybe there's not enough time in this project to do it, but we can put it in the backlog for later on, is a great way to think about building out these services and integrating in the generative AI, but also marrying it to Copilot Studio and Copilot Studio as kind of a launching ground for all sorts of other actions and capabilities using Power Automate. So keep that in mind. All right. Second, this is my last slide, and this will be fast. Native integration. So Copilot's under Microsoft 365, so it's under the same sort of integration along with all those services. You don't have to worry about maintaining another set of administrative platform features and controls and users and so on. With generative AI and the partnership with Azure or with OpenAI, it's using ChatGPT as that fundamental layer to provide the conversation to the user. So as that relationship matures, as new updates to that product become available, we can expect that to trickle down and be part of the offerings and the features and the capabilities of Copilots that you build in Copilot Studio. As we saw in the demo, Power Platform integration. So we use Power Automate. We were sending stuff off to approvals, sending emails out through Exchange. It's built right into that entire stack. Our Canvas app, where I interacted with the Copilot and had the chat experience, would have been a Power App on a phone as a Canvas app. So it builds itself right in with a few clicks and integrates seamlessly into the Power Platform. And then the OpenAI calibration, which I touched on in the generative AI bullet point as well. And also that you can leverage and expose Azure OpenAI capabilities through Copilot Studio using actions as well. All right.
So Jimmy, let's just jump right to the questions slide. We'll take those and I'll round out with the other slides in a minute.
Sounds great. Boom.
Thank you. So I've got go back one slide if you would. Got a few questions in the Q&A. One of them was, does Microsoft use any of the data for training the large language models that are being used for Copilot Studio or Copilot in general? And could they be sent back to Microsoft, or that data get back to Microsoft or get to a third party? And the simple answer to that is no. Microsoft's really explicit about that term for the use of the Copilot, that your data stays within your tenant. It's not used to train, and it's not shared with Microsoft or any third parties. I can find you the T's and C's and legalese around that, but short answer is no. It's not used for any of that purpose. There is another question that is this, Jimmy. It's, can Copilot Studio be used to generate bots that can generate reports with information like user display name, UPN, account state, department, manager? I got to expand that. Whoops. Manager, and last sign-in date. So it looks like being able to get telemetry from interaction inside of an M365 tenant.
Yeah, and most likely, but you would have to configure that knowledge source in the knowledge tab that I opened up earlier. So if if Power Automate, for example, has access to that information, then you could set that up as a knowledge source for that Copilot and be able to ask questions of that information.
Yeah, so I think as long as you can configure that connection to the Microsoft Graph and your tenant, then certainly you could enumerate that kind of data.
Yep.
All right, going back to the chat with a few more questions. Let's see. Are there extra configurations and instructions outside of what you can set in the administration section being applied to your messages before they are sent to the LLM to generate a response?
That's a good question. So there is an entire stack of, so in the actions tab, we try to stick to the no code, low code solution as much as possible, but there are AI plugins that you can develop and extend out the capabilities of Copilot Studio. And I think that might fall into the realm of working into the AI plugin space. And we can definitely get back on that one and do some digging, some examples of AI plugins.
Great. I think that is all the questions I found. Any other questions around Copilot Studio today?
If it doesn't have a admin center, like I can log into a whole separate admin center for Power Automate and Power Apps. They have their own. So if it doesn't have an admin center as such, as an administrator, how do you manage the user's permissions and licenses and all that inside there?
Good question.
We don't have an answer for that one.
So user licensing is assigned in the M365 admin center, right? So you would go and give somebody, provision them a license for Copilot Studio.
Okay.
As far as managing permissions,
I'm
gonna punt to Jimmy on that one.
Yeah, I'll just share here really quick. I might have glossed over 2 tabs during my demo. I got excited when we got to actions and topics, I think. So here's the channels tab though that I'm showing here. There isn't necessarily the Copilot Studio itself lets you author and set up your knowledge and your topics. In GCC, the analytics tab isn't available at this time, and so it's kind of, and I'm not sure, they're custom Power BI reports. So there's not a lot to see there, or it's not really a true admin center. So wasn't planning on showing that in today's demo. But for channels, I did accidentally kind of skip over this. And this is where you would publish your Copilot out to a variety of different channels of where users can interact with it. And that's based off of the authentication settings. And so if you were to publish it out to a mobile app, or for my sample here where I had it in Canvas app, the permissions of who has access to it are really who has access to the Canvas app. And it's managed at the Power Platform security level in the admin center for this app and who the app's been shared to. If it has to do with the demo site, this would be for Power Pages if this Copilot was published out to Power Pages, and then who has access to the pages where the Copilot is available at, or if it's making use of the Entra ID, it would then use permissions there. So I think that what I'm trying to get at, I think, is it's governed by where you publish it to, and then how you govern access or the users of whichever platform the Copilot's published to would then govern the user's access to interact with that bot, if that makes sense.
Okay, so like everyone then is pretty much a developer, whoever has access to that third party or internal app or a third party app.
Yeah, so here my role would be a citizen developer or a maker or an admin to be able to see the Copilot Studio screen that we have here where I'm interacting with the bot. But in our demo, when I hit play and we had this would actually kind of be like a phone app. If I was that employee, maybe I work in sales and I was at the airport and I lost my laptop, this app, this help desk app would be shared out to our sales security group along with access
another
to this
question
environment.
with that. You're mentioning citizens, and I'm really familiar with that. In citizens, you have to train your people for low code, no code, because they do sometimes have to add code in there. Is there another process of training the user on how to code that in there? Whatever coding they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Canvas app development for Power Apps, we're getting a little out of the scope of Copilot Studio, but just to touch on it really quickly, the Canvas apps are mostly drag and drop. There is some code that we do put in from time to time. The chatbot is pretty much click to configure, but we do have a team at Planet called Evolve that provides a lot of videos and training services for Microsoft and the Power Platform too. So they might have some offerings or some training for Canvas app development that would help if they were going to publish a Copilot out to that.
I meant for the Copilot Studio itself. If they use the Copilot Studio itself, they're using an IDE, right? So is there any type of training for that IDE?
Microsoft has a Learn kind of portal that goes through how to use the Copilot Studio that you see here. This is kind of where we built the demo at, though, and it's really we're adding in blocks here, so to speak. So it's available, though, for sure. If that answers the question, does that help, or am I still missing it?
No, I hear you. I'm just I'm a little shocked that they don't have like a citizens training. Most of So we have Automation Anywhere bots, and they do have a citizens training just for something like this, like their studio for low code, no code to train their users. Because there's groups, right? Each individual division has its own group of folks, so they're going to have a whole different work ethic that they're building out. So I'm just a little surprised that that's not there. But anyway, yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great questions. All right. Well, we got just a couple more things, so I think we'll switch back. So if we can go to slide 14, Jimmy.
I'm on it.
So just kind of in the vein of training, I wanted to just highlight this, that many of you are considering making pretty significant investments in Copilot, whether that be Copilot Studio on the Power Platform or M365 Copilot when it's available in GCC High. I'd just like to make people aware that we have got customized training for Copilot for M365, and I think there's some modules in there for Copilot Studio. These are going to be, if you're familiar with Evolve 365, this allows you to have learning paths and take those very targeted, quick hitter, easy to consume videos, 90 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes on how to do a specific thing, right? You can search in there, help your end users get more comfortable with using Copilot or using Copilot Studio if they're developing a solution there. So just a call out for that. Reach out to us if you've got any questions or want to learn more about that. It's been tremendously helpful. Obviously, this is targeted right now in the commercial and GCC space for M365 Copilot, but coming soon for GCC High. And then let's go to slide 16, just another awareness thing. We are continuing to invest in our, go back one slide, please. We're continuing to invest in our You Already Own It community, and we're calling this an Azure OpenAI discovery. But what this allows you to do is meet with one of our subject matter experts, and we're going to take a high-level approach to AI and talk about current priorities across your organization, and then start looking at where AI fits. Not so much where Copilot fits or where Copilot Studio or Azure, but where does AI fit? We'll review where it fits within your organization with the capabilities across the Microsoft platform, help you brainstorm and think about those use cases, and help you develop a strategy on how to embrace AI in a way that mitigates risks and creates some intentional process around it. We've done several of these over the last couple of months, and the results are outstanding. The attendees come away with a very clear vision of how to leverage AI and all that Microsoft's bringing to the table there. So reach out to us if that's something that you would want to do for your organization as part of one of the benefit sessions. And with that, let's go to slide 18 and the last poll. And it's pretty simple. Give us a rating if you would. We're doing our best to make sure we bring you curated, important, relevant information. So if you would give us a quick rating, we appreciate that so we can continue to improve. And then certainly if you have any comments, things that we would like to see or change in the future, we're happy to implement those changes based on that feedback. All right. In the deck that you'll be receiving today, there are some resources, some helpful links, those types of things. And then let's round out with slide 21 there, Jimmy. So our next DIB Cloud Office Hours, we're going to talk about data governance with Purview, and that will be on January 16th, 2025. Same time, same place. We hope to see you there, and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.